Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This is what if Gohan was sent to DxD. Before we start, remember to like and subscribe to help the channel. Also check the description for the creator of the fanfic.
Chapter 15. The body of our protagonist lay there, lying peacefully in the comfort of his bed, his black hair in spikes, resting gently on the pillow, while his light snoring was the only thing that was heard in the apparently quiet room. A dim sunlight shone through the curtains, failing to disturb our young warrior's peaceful sleep. Gohan had learned his lesson. Therefore, the curtains in his room were closed, preventing the strong glow emitted by the giant star. Beep, 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 beep. The loud alarm clock rang, doing his job, and managing to wake up the scholar in training from his magnificent dream. Why the hell did he keep buying those things? Gohan yawned sleepily, as he slowly leaned on his arms to get his body off the comfortable mattress in his room. 5:35. I have to get ready or else I'll be late for the club, he mumbled sleepily, while making one more effort to get out of the mattress. However, his tired face, as well as his slowness in doing so, showed how enthusiastic he was with the idea. Managing to stand up while turning off the annoying alarm clock, he clearly remembered yesterday. How could he forget? It was pretty much a bunch of emotions and issues, all revolving around certain girls. On the one hand, Rainier had finally decided to leave behind all the evil she had done. She even helped save Issei's friend. If it weren't for her, the little nun would undoubtedly die that day. Fortunately, Asia was still alive, although now as a devil. However, it was something she wanted. Issei couldn't be happier with it. On the other hand, he still had to go look for the black-haired woman. He was worried about her whereabouts, but he was sure that they would see each other again. It was only a matter of time. But in the end, everything went well. Unfortunately, Akeno and Rias did not think the same. Gohan was questioned by an annoyed Rias. However, he managed to appease the girl a bit, deciding that they would talk more calmly at the club the next day. The black-haired man had no head to discuss these issues with the Grimoire. He still had to order his mind, and knowing what he would say to the club president, he was determined to tell her the truth. However, Azazel was another matter. The Demi-Saiyan could not betray the trust of the fallen. But Akeno-san, he thought calmly, but somewhat dejected by it, as he picked up his Kuo Academy uniform. She ignored me all the time, he remembered, as he put on his uniform. He didn't have to wear it, since Rias had convinced the director to give all club members a day off. Gohan deduced that it had something to do with being a devil. However, he was his mother's son after all. Always be ready to study. They were his exact words, and Gohan had to follow them to the letter, even further than this. But going back to Akeno, the girl practically ignored him. Gohan couldn't even make eye contact with her. When she looked away from him, she was clearly angry. He could also see traces of insecurity in her. However, he didn't dare tell her something. I simply remained silent, trying to understand the violet-eyed girl. I'll try to talk to her today, he murmured, as he finished dressing in his academic uniform. I hope things work out, he continued. He just couldn't bear the idea of losing her. It was unsettling just thinking about it. They had been through a lot of things together. Shaking his head slightly, he managed to get out of his current dilemma with the Queen of Rias, only to then head towards the entrance of his department and then leave the building, in the direction of the occult club, where his friends were surely waiting for him. Colleagues awaiting the answers to all your questions. This would undoubtedly be a long day for our young Saiyan. His journey was not very long. Kuo was not very far from where he lived. Azazel had undoubtedly thought of this. Shortly after, he saw the great school building in the distance. They were very well-kept facilities in the opinion of the black-haired man. The first time he arrived, he was surprised by such a structure and the different recreation areas that this place had. His gaze focused on a couple of students. They were making a run for the large entrance doors, and then heading briskly towards their classrooms, respectively. They would undoubtedly be late. Poor guys. Fortunately, that was not his fate. Gohan-san. The shout of a certain brown-haired man called him from behind, making him turn to see the brown-haired man running towards him. Issei-san. Good morning. The black-haired smiled, seeing his friend's slight gasp when he arrived with him. Even though we don't have classes, I have to say that I'm impressed that you got up so early, he said, approving the decision of his brown-haired friend. Yeah, well, Issei started, getting some air back. Bucho clearly said that she wanted us all early at the club, he remembered, looking at the black-haired boy's nervous face. He knew what the meeting would be about. Gohan was going to give them many explanations as to why he knew Yuma so much, and why he let her escape, going as far as to confront his president. In fact, Issei was surprised that his friend knew more of the girl than him, who was practically her boyfriend. Although she would then kill him, of course. Did Yuma-chan cheat on me with Gohan-san? He couldn't help thinking about it. Had he really been cheated in more ways than one? Issei-san. Gohan interrupted the brunette's thoughts, seeing how his friend's brow furrowed every second, clearly annoyed with something or someone. I think we should go to the club, for sure now they are waiting for us there, he told her, looking at the brunette's nod in agreement. Quickly, they headed towards their destination, managing to walk along the quiet path that led to the academy's mini forest, where the club's abandoned building was located. By the way, Gohan-san, Issei called to a puzzled Gohan, who looked at him curiously. Thank you very much for everything. The smile that was planted on the brown-haired man was the most sincere the Demi-Saiyan had ever seen. Of him, making him smile in return. You have nothing to be thankful for, Issei-san, the Saiyajin answered, as they continued towards the building. That's what friends are for, right? He smiled, just as his family knew how to, as he walked through the door, followed by a happy brunette behind him. Yes, I think so, Issei answered, happy for his friend's words, as they reached the entrance of the room where the club resided, before the brunette went ahead to open the doors, only to leave them, somewhat confused, seeing inside. The room was just as they remembered it, being this, somewhat dark. However, the sun's rays entered through the window, managing to illuminate the room a bit. The candles were arranged all over the place, but they were turned off. The two green armchairs were still in place, one on each side of the other, while the small wooden table stood between them, and of course, Rias's large wooden desk where she did her paperwork, didn't seem to have suffered any change. However, but what? Gohan asked confused, looking at the makeshift clothesline, and the small items of clothing hanging on the rope. What are these clothes doing here? He questioned with a noticeable blush as he looked at the bra, and the little pearl-colored panties in the room. Quote. He did not receive a response from the brown-haired man, making him turn to look at him, only for a drop of sweat to run down his face, when he saw that distant and shiny look on the boy next to him. Sometimes he forgot what a pervert he was. Could be your friend. Issei was in paradise. The brown-haired man simply ignored or did not listen to his alien half-friend, and he launched himself towards the lingerie on the clothesline. He knew who this bra and those pearly panties belonged to. It can't be. It's Asia-chan's underwear, the pervert thought with a depraved face, while holding the nun's small panties. But what are they doing here? He composed himself a bit. However, he couldn't help but feel ecstatic when he felt with his touch the scratchy fabric of the panties. Gohan could only make a blank face at his friend's actions. He seemed to have a very serious obsession with girls' underwear. He was simply a pervert to the core. No doubt Master Roshi would be proud. The sound of a shower caught the attention of our two young boys, causing them to look into a green curtain in the room, blocking their view behind it. Gohan didn't need to be a genius to know what was going on behind the closed blinds. Asia was clearly taking a morning shower. She could feel her ki on the other side. Issei, on the other hand, was totally paralyzed, imagining the possible scenarios that awaited him behind that thin curtain. He heard the slight humming of Asia on the other side, without a doubt, completely naked. He simply had to go there, partially move the curtain, and he could see. Zaaas. A loud bang was heard in the room, followed by the groans of a sore pervert on the floor. Hag, Kaneko-chan, the brown-haired man complained, while rubbing his neck where the Nekomata had hit him. Why are you hitting me so hard? A lone tear fell from his eye in pain, looking down at the shorter girl. You should be in jail, pervert, an expressionless Kaneko told him. Stealing someone's underwear is a crime, she told him, as the boy got up from the ground, still rubbing himself in pain from the blow. Gohan just smiled awkwardly at this. He hadn't noticed the Nekomata's presence, but he was glad to see her. However, his friend didn't think the same, as he looked scared at the small white-haired girl. Issei-san, Asia's voice was heard, making those present turn to look at her. The Demi-Saiyan quickly looked away, while a blush appeared on his cheeks, when he saw the girl in just a bath towel, slightly opening the blinds to see the commotion outside. By Kami, didn't there exist decency in this world? Issei-senpai was trying to steal your underwear, Kaneko said to the nun, who looked confused at the increasingly nervous brunette. It's a misunderstanding, Asia-chan. The pervert yelled excitedly, As he tried to hang the panties he was holding on the clothesline, they just fell off, and I picked them up to put them back. He continued, trying to hook the little garment on her, but failing miserably. Gohan shook his head in disapproval, while he looked at his friend, more and more nervous and blushing. He couldn't do anything for him. The boy simply had no choice in this. If he wasn't in another dimension, he would think that Issei was a distant relative of the Master Roshi. I see that everyone is present. Rias's voice made an appearance, when she entered the door of the club, followed by Akino in silence, and Kiba, a little behind them, who closed the doors when everyone was ready. Inside. Rias-san, Bucho, they said a Gohan Issei, surprised by the sudden appearance of him. Gohan, however, looked at the girl next to him. Her face was calm, her violet eyes did not seem to carry conflict inside. The Demi-Saiyan felt a little relieved to see her current as she normally does. Maybe he had forgiven. Hello Akino-san, the black-haired boy smiled radiantly, as he placed his hand behind her neck, as only he knew how to do it. Hello Gohan, the black-haired world darkened, the smile on his face falling abruptly, as he looked in shock at Akino ahead of him. Akino just called him without using kun. Why did he feel a small sting in his chest? Was what was going through the stunned black-haired man's mind. He wasn't the only one. Everyone present except for Asia watched the scene in surprise and confusion. Akino always called him kun when she made a pass at him or just to make him nervous. However, not now. Why so sudden? Rias looked at her best friend unsure. She was aware of why Akino did this. It all had to do with the girl from the other day, Rainier. If she remembered correctly, her Reina had a grudge against all the fallen angels thanks to her father Baraquile. Akino hated her father with all her being and everything he represented. She even went so far as to hate half of what she herself was. It was worrying, it worried her greatly. Her best friend might seem like a very happy-go-lucky girl on the outside, but she knew better. Akino was lying. Her Reina sank into endless negative emotions that tormented her every night. She wanted to help her. However, she couldn't do anything to fix her problems. She just wouldn't listen to any of it. Why did Bucho call us? It was Issei who broke the silence. He clearly knew why they were here. However, he had to get out of this awkward moment. He could see his friend's stunned face looking at Akino's imperturbable face. He really felt sorry for him. Well Issei, Rias began, sighing heavily to get everyone's attention. Let's take a seat, because I think it's going to be a long talk, she said looking briefly at a stunned Demi-Saiyan, who still didn't get over her initial shock. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for him, yet she remembered Rainier, and any sign of sympathy on her face died. Yes, it was definitely going to be a long day for our young Saiyan. Some explanations later. You're full of trouble Gohan, Rias commented, as she leaned back on her desk, arms crossed looking at the red-haired black-haired man's flushed face. I understand your ideals of, always give a second chance. However, you should have warned me about it and not have acted on your own, he lightly scolded a dejected Demi-Saiyan, who only managed to lower his head a little. Gohan had told them everything that happened with Rainier, the brief encounters he had with her, as well as his decision to make her change sides. It was difficult for them to understand at first, and more Rias. Akino on the other hand, never opened her she-mouthed or interrupted the conversation, she simply remained silent. However, Gohan noticed that she seemed to be the most attentive to his story, measuring every expression on her face in search of a lie. It disturbed him greatly. Since he was still keeping Azazel's secret from them, he mentally wondered if he should tell them about it. Gohan wanted to do it, however, he couldn't. Azazel would have to agree first, but he was determined to tell them at some point. Gohan simply wanted to stop keeping secrets from his friends. It was bad enough that he didn't tell Rias the 100% truth. The president is right Gohan-san, Kiba said, snapping him out of his inner dilemma. That fallen angel Rainier may have decided to change, however, not everyone will take that path, he continued calmly. It was true, and Gohan already knew it. However, it was a habit that was inherited from his father, one of his last legacies that he left encumbered with Gohan. He simply could not change no matter how much it annoyed his friends. This was something valuable to him, more than just a treasure. Asia, and Kaneko kept silent, listening intently to the entire conversation, Kaneko being the least expressive of the group, of course. The brown-haired man felt sorry for his friend, however, he understood the reason for his president's anger. Yuma had deceived him so easily, he couldn't help but feel a little suspicious towards her. After all, she was the one who almost killed him. However, she knew that if anyone could make her change, it was Gohan. The guy seemed to radiate pure goodness from him. Perhaps it was that kindness that made him have so many girls around him. She even realized that his president, she had feelings for the Saiyan. Issei envied him with all his being. But at the same time, she had great respect for him. Asia didn't know what to think. She didn't know him well. However, she was grateful that he tried to save her that night in the church. She was also surprised to discover that thanks to Rainier, she was still alive. She would undoubtedly have to talk to him, the fallen angel, to thank him. Anyway, the occult club president sighed. Since we solved Gohan's problem, she continued before turning her critical gaze to Issei. There is a matter I have to discuss with you, Issei, she said, while the brown visibly tensed as he felt Rias' gaze on him. Gohan sighed inwardly, grateful that critical gazes were diverted away from him, and to Issei trembling on the couch. Poor his friend. Our duty as demons is to respond to the contracts that the humans request of us. He began explaining to the brown-haired man attentive to his words. However, your failure 2 days ago reduced the popularity that the demons have in Kuo. He continued with a stern look, greatly scaring the seated brown-haired man. It seems that people are afraid of dying like that human who hired you. He seriously looked at the poor boy, who was being consoled by an Asia anguished by his friend. But, Bucho, Issei started, feeling Asia's small hands rubbing his tense back. It wasn't even my fault that the guy died in. He was silenced by a look from his president, scaring him a bit. There are no excuses, Issei. It could be that that priest was responsible for his death. I scolded him severely, making him swallow saliva, but our duty as devils is to ensure that the contract is fulfilled, and the contractor is satisfied for it. Gohan patted his friend on the back, who sank into misery as he ducked his head away from his president. I'm sorry, Issei-san, the black-haired consoled, trying to cheer him up a bit. If I had been there, surely none of this would have happened. It's partly my fault too. This didn't seem to cheer up his friend's state. That's right, Gohan, it was Rias, who looked seriously at the black-haired boy. Unfortunately he wasn't there, and maybe it was due to that fallen angel, am I right? The color on the Demi-Saiyan's face drained away. He cursed himself for intruding on the conversation. He said awkwardly, trying to find the exact words, I'm so dead. He thought in a panic. However, Rias silenced him, as she extended her hand in his direction, a clear signal for him to stop. It doesn't matter, Gohan, he sighed, as he slightly closed his eyes tiredly. Just make sure it doesn't happen again, at least, not without me finding out. He gave in, knowing the black-haired man's stubbornness. Gohan just nodded in agreement. At least he didn't get into big trouble with her. Maybe she's still mad at him, but at least he understood her situation, to a certain extent. His gaze traveled to the girl who remained silent throughout the conversation. Clearly Akeno had a bunch of thoughts inside her head. He could see the girl's blank look, as if she was trying to figure something out. What could it be? Okay, Rias said, drawing the attention of those present. You can leave, but you, Issei, you must complete this contract. She took a piece of paper from her desk before handing it to the curious brunette. Try not to disappoint me this time, Issei. He nodded quickly, as he inspected the document in his hands. The members of the club began to leave, these being Issei in a hurry to fulfill the order that his president sent him, while Kiba and Kaneko looked at him with amusement, this being the first, and the last, simply curious about the behavior of his senpai. Rias, Akeno, and Asia were left behind. The Grimoire still had business to deal with the nun, and Akeno being Rias's right-hand woman, her presence was surely necessary. Gohan glanced briefly at Akeno, who didn't look away. However, she didn't show anything special on her face. She just gave that blank look as she watched him leave the club. No, the things with Akeno had to be resolved. Rias-san. The black-haired man stopped at the entrance, his eyes taking on a determined look that surprised the girls a bit, especially an expressionless Akeno. Wouldn't you mind if I borrow Akeno-san for a few moments? I wouldn't hesitate anymore, I just wouldn't do it. He and Akeno had to talk. Rias looked at that look on Gohan's face. She knew what he was getting at. She didn't need to be a genius for that. Not at all, Gohan. The withering look that her friend gave her didn't work for her. Actually, I wanted to talk privately with Asia here. The nun pointed to herself in bewilderment, making both of them laugh a little. Akeno couldn't believe what her best friend had put into her. She didn't want to talk to Gohan. Not in this moment. Her emotions were a mess well hidden behind that mask she put on. Whatever it is you want, Gohan, she began, as she crossed her arms, looking away from those onyx eyes. Akeno was afraid of getting lost in them. We can discuss it here at the club. She was firm, and those present, they saw her. However, what are you doing? A surprised and blushing Akeno yelled, when her feet stopped touching the ground below. Get off me, Gohan. I don't want to talk to. She couldn't follow her tantrum, as Rias cast a silence magic seal on the girl's mouth, temporarily preventing her from speaking. Make sure you talk some sense into her, Gohan, Rias requested, looking at the Demi-Saiyan nodding, holding her best friend kicking, to no avail. Deciding not to waste any more time, Gohan left the club, with a disagreeing Akeno trying to break free from her iron grip, while doing her best to speak through the Grimoire's magic seal. Asia's puzzled voice made Rias look at her. What did I miss, President? I asked, puzzled by the scene she witnessed. Nothing important, Asia. Rias smiled, seeing the nun's confusion. Those are things that they have to solve. Don't worry, she just hoped that her friend would solve her internal problems. Maybe Gohan is the person to get her out of that contempt she felt towards the fallen angels, and her apparent self-hatred. Just maybe. With Gohan and Akeno, the Demi-Saiyan was grateful that the girl in his arms stopped kicking. Instead, she was silent, either because of the magic seal or because she wanted to, while her arms were crossed under her chest, clearly in sign of annoyance. Currently, the black-haired man was walking along the path of the academy, drawing the attention of the students in the area. After all, how many times have you seen a man carry an extremely beautiful girl like Akeno in his arms in bridal mode? Leaving school, I head to the nearest park. Why the park? I had no idea, yet I felt that this is where it should go. A resigned Akeno, she couldn't do anything more than sigh. While being carried by Gohan, she couldn't deny that she enjoyed these moments with him, she even wanted them. However, today was not one of those days. She wasn't mad at Gohan. Of course not, she would never. Well, maybe a little jealous. However, she was uneasy at the mere thought of seeing him interact with that Rainier girl. Why did she have to forgive a fallen angel of all things? Gohan didn't know how long the seal Rias put on him would last. However, the seal did its job well, and he was grateful to her as it gave him a chance to think of what to say to Akeno. The mute sound of the girl in his arms made him stop. He seemed to be trying to tell her something about her. However, he was clueless as he watched her squirm in her arms. Do you want me to put you down? He deduced, being answered by a slight nod. Akeno-san. Will you promise not to try to run away? He questioned, patiently waiting for the Queen Rias' answer. He nodded briefly, but hesitantly a bit. Okay, Akeno-san, I'll put you on the ground, the black-haired man said, keeping his word and letting the violet-eyed girl stand up on her own. As if on cue, the seal in Akeno's mouth immediately disappeared, surprising Gohan, who didn't expect this to happen. What do you want to talk? Her gaze was sharp, very strange on her, as he repeatedly stomped on the floor with his slippers, yet Gohan wouldn't back down when he saw that look on her. Gohan's face immediately became serious, making the girl hesitate a bit ahead. Why are you mad at me? He was blunt, he was sick of beating around the bush. Is this all because of Rainier-san? The hateful look that settled on his face confirmed his suspicions. Why did she look so furious just hearing his name? Maybe they had met before. What was behind Akeno's hatred directed at the other girl? There were many questions that flooded her mind. You're an idiot. Such words came from an unrecognizable Akeno. Gohan was stunned by what he told him. You're a fool. Idiot. Fool. The girl lunged at him, hitting his chest repeatedly. The blows didn't do much damage to his body, however. His heart, I couldn't say the same. Akeno. Gohan choked on his own saliva, looking in shock at the girl's violet hair, as he was hit harder by her on his chest. Akeno's vision was lost when she began to see the Demi-Saiyan's torso blurry. She knew he was crying, she could feel the tears coming out of her own eyes, slightly wetting her academy uniform. The noise of the people around and the cars in course, they closed. Akeno could only hear her punches on Gohan's chest. She was aware that what she was doing was wrong. She was letting her anger and frustration out on the person she loved the most in the world. That person who meant everything to her. The one who promised her that he would be there for her always, and yet, here she was, blaming him for everything. What should I do? The Demi-Saiyan thought dejectedly. He could see the tears on the girl's face. The people around looked at the scene with curiosity. However, They understood that it was a problem between couples, and they continued with their trip. I don't like to see her cry, she is more beautiful without those tears. He remembered that charming smile that she usually directs only to him. Silly. Akeno lost her strength. She fell into Gohan's arms in silence. The girl didn't take long to bury her face in the black-haired boy's chest. Silly, she muttered under her breath, being muffled for the fabric of the academy uniform. Gohan felt how his clothes were wet from Akeno's tears. His throat went dry seeing her in such a deplorable state. Gohan wanted to make her feel better. I don't want to lose you, Akeno. The girl's eyes, still teary, widened. However, she managed to see the blurry face of the boy. Please. Tell me what's going on, damn it. Her voice cracked slightly, as she lightly shook her shoulders in despair. She began awkwardly, while slightly averting her gaze from his face. I don't want to lose you either, Gohan-kun. She closed her eyes tightly. However, the Saiyan's warm touch made her look back at him. So, why have you been avoiding me? Why are you mad at me? He couldn't stand seeing her like this in such a state. However, she wanted answers. The oppression in her chest was so great that Gohan thought she might die. Akeno bit her lip slightly. Should I tell her? She didn't want to tell him the whole truth. Gohan already knew a lot about her. Akeno had opened up to the black-haired man that time in her apartment. She told him about the death of her mother and the hatred she felt towards her father. I was jealous, she confessed in a shout. This made the passers-by stop momentarily, and they looked at her in bewilderment, others amused by her outburst. However, most went back to their things. She couldn't bear the idea to see you with another girl. It's fine, especially with that fallen angel, he told her, adding a more venomous tone when referring to Rainier. Jealous? The black-haired man asked, confused, not understanding the definition Akeno used. However, he realized that the hatred in his ki returned again when he mentioned the black-haired woman. I don't know what that means, Akeno-san, but I don't understand the hatred you have for Rainier-san. She already left the past behind. The others understood, even Issei-san, who was the most harmed. Why don't you want to forgive her? He saw her look away again. There was a dramatic silence for a few moments, increasing our young Saiyan's nerves. Because I hate my father, he muttered under his breath. However, he said it with such venom that the black-haired man was surprised by it. Gohan remembered that night when Akeno opened up to him, that night where she had told him about the death of her mother and the hatred she felt towards her own father. But didn't that explain her hatred towards the fallen angels? That he had to do with Baraquile. I'm stupid. How I didn't realize it before. He felt stupid for not realizing the real reason why Akeno hated Rainier or what he represented, and also why she had been avoiding him all this time. She simply felt conflicted with her feelings. She hated the fallen angels, but she liked him. Then Rainier entered the scene, and I can't stand the idea of seeing him near another girl, in this case, a fallen angel. Now it made sense. What does she mean to you, Gohan-kun? The question surprised the Demi-Saiyan, taking him out of his internal reflection. To be honest, he never considered this. What did Rainier represent to him? It was a very good question. Akeno-san, the black-haired man didn't know what to say, when the words died in his mouth. What did Rainier represent to him? He considered her a friend, of course. However, Gohan felt that he had to watch over her. Rainier seemed to be very lonely. In his eyes the girl seemed very fragile and insecure of herself, in short, an emotional disaster. The Demi-Saiyan couldn't turn a blind eye and not help the poor girl. But there was something else. Gohan knew, he felt that there was something there those times he shared with her, where he held her in his arms while he saw her cry on his chest. He remembered that they caused strange sensations inside him. Gohan felt happy when he was with her, and sad when he was away. It was confusing. However, he had already experienced these sensations before. Akeno and Rias were the only ones besides Rainier that put him in such a state. But what did it mean? Gohan had no idea of romance. His life had been training. Fights, deaths, more training, more fights. So that theme was never touched by him. He had read 1 or 2 books related to love. However, it was not the same as experiencing it for yourself. However, there was something Gohan was sure of. She is more important. He couldn't help but think about it. He just couldn't when he saw the girl who represented one world. For him with those onyx eyes, he suffered because of him. Akeno felt her throat dry from crying, and her anguish grew in her when she saw the Demi-Saiyan's null response. Her silence gave him away. she could clearly see that there was something there regarding the fallen angel from the other day. Perhaps, was he losing Gohan? She felt more tears threatened to spill out when she came to such a terrible deduction. Akeno felt her heart crack into 1,000 pieces. It all made sense now. That girl was taking the Gohan out of her. Gohan-kun. A tear managed to escape from her violet eyes, returning her gaze to that face that she longed for so much. I love you. I love you so much. I don't know what I would do if I lost you. She was silenced. Gohan sealed his lips with Akeno, preventing her from continuing, while he wrapped his strong arms around her slender waist, leaving no clear path of escape. It was just him and her, and he wouldn't let go of her for anything. Gohan-kun. It was the only thing that registered correctly in Akeno's mind. She short-circuited her brain, while her eyes were wide, unable to believe what the Demi-Saiyan had said. Made. Akeno felt weak in her legs, they just didn't respond to her right now. It was a miracle that Gohan was holding her like this, or else, she was already on the ground on her knees, unable to get up. Closing her eyes, the girl let herself go, feeling safe just by being wrapped in his arms. Akeno surrounded the black-haired boy's neck, drawing him closer to her and intensifying the kiss. Wanting to feel closer to Gohan, she wanted everything from him. Kisses from her, the caresses of him, the love of him, all. Gohan could only smile between the kiss. When he felt the aggressiveness of the girl in his arms, he couldn't be happier with this. He could feel how his ki lost all uncertainty in her, being replaced by absolute happiness. Akeno seemed to shine brighter than the sun right now, simply more beautiful. As much as they wanted to stay like this all their lives. The oxygen began to take its toll on them, separating them from their intense display of emotions. "Do you forgive me?" the black-haired man asked, gently separating from the kiss, and resting his forehead on the girl's in his arms. Gohan knew what his answer would be, but he wanted to hear it from his own mouth. The Demi-Saiyan, couldn't help but smile upon hearing his iconic phrase. His Akeno had returned. "I forgive you, Gohan-kun." A blush settled on the cheeks of the Priestess of Lightning, while she looked into the eyes so deeply of her boyfriend. After everything that had happened here, did that mean that Gohan was now officially her boyfriend? Was the question that crossed her mind. "I'm glad to hear you say that, Akeno-san." The black-haired man began, happy with how things had turned out. "If there's something you want me to do to make it up to you, don't hesitate to tell me," he finished, while paying all his attention to the contemplative girl in front. Akeno smiled mysteriously when she heard Gohan's words, "Yufufu." Of course, she had something to ask of him. Some time later, we see Gohan enter his apartment, a little exhausted from the day he had. He had the feeling when he woke up that it would be a very busy day for him. However, he didn't think about the scale. All those explanations he gave, the nervousness he felt, being questioned by Rias, followed by the constant critical looks his friends gave him every time he was going to answer a question. All this without mentioning the mountain of emotions he released with Akeno a while ago. To the further dismay, the girl had asked him for a date, were her exact words. Gohan had no choice but to accept her request. He had to make it up to her somehow. He couldn't just go back. However, the problem was another. To begin with, what hell was it a date? He didn't have the slightest idea what it was. He just accepted what Akeno asked of him, lost in the moment he had with her. "Maybe Azazel-san knows about it," he muttered, as he plopped down on the chair in his apartment. Speaking of the fallen angel, Gohan hadn't seen him for a while. He was worried about what the adult was doing. Since that day in the meeting he promised to pay him a visit to clarify his doubts, Gohan still hadn't forgotten what had happened with his tutor Legal. Azazel seemed to be one step ahead of him, baffling him, and frustrating him to a great extent. How had the Fallen been able to overcome his mind blocks? Gohan didn't know what to make of it, although Azazel seemed like a nice guy, and kind to a certain point. He was disturbed by the mystery that seemed to surround the subject. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking on his door took him out of his thoughts. Who could it be? He wondered. No one was going to come to his apartment, at least not that he knew of. Getting up from the comfortable chair, he walked towards the entrance of his apartment, only to open the door and see a smiling Azazel. "Hey Gohan-kun, how's my favorite protege doing?" he exclaimed as he put his arm on the stunned black-haired man's shoulder. "Azazel-san," he questioned, but quickly composed himself. "What a surprise to see you here," he said dismissively, as he freed himself from his iron control. Azazel just smiled at the Demi-Saiyan's comment. He could clearly see that he was being sarcastic. Well kid, I owe you some explaining, don't I? I watch him frown, as he went further into the department, ignoring him before dropping into the living room chair. I would say Azazel-san, Gohan started, walking towards him and sitting on the other chair, you have a lot of things to explain to me, you owe me. I had to lie to Rias-san about you, again. Azazel smirked at this, but he was grateful to the black-haired man. It's better that way Gohan-kun, they shouldn't know about me, he told him. However, the black-haired boy noticed a slight mumble of, for now, that the fallen angel let out. Gohan sighed internally. Well, if that's what his legal guardian wanted, he wouldn't question it, though. How did you break my mental defenses, Azazel-san? He went to the point. Doubt not at him. Gohan just couldn't stop thinking about it, and it made him very uneasy. Azazel smiled calculatingly. He knew what his protege wanted to achieve. He was aware that this moment would come. I didn't tell you before, Gohan-kun, but being a fallen angel, I have psychic abilities, he replied, earning an unbelievable look from the Demi-Saiyan about to question him. Not because he's someone extremely powerful, it makes you immune to everything. Gohan-kun, he smiled seeing him hesitate. The black-haired man lowered his head a little dejected. It was true, Azazel was right, Freed had injured him due to his carelessness. He had lowered his defenses and the crazy priest took the opportunity to stab him in the abdomen. It wasn't the first time this had happened to him, with Cell, Majin Buu, etc. All of them were proof of his mistake in trusting himself. I understand your point, Azazel-san. However, he looked up, looking at the smiling fallen one. I know you know about me, and that I was trained by Piccolo-san in the mind realm. He continued to narrow his eyes at the adult, unfazed by his story. Maybe I'm not as good as he is, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but I can tell that you alone wouldn't have been able to break through my barriers, Azazel-san. Is there something you're hiding from me? I finish, while waiting for Azazel's answer. Gohan expected a surprised or at least curious look from the fallen one. However, the widening smile on him was something I didn't anticipate. What the hell was Azazel hiding? You're very cunning, Gohan-kun. I take the floor, leaving the black-haired man curious on the couch. You're absolutely right, I wouldn't have been able to do that on my own. In fact, I have to admit that I tried it before when you came to this world for the first time, revealed, leaving him very surprised by what he said. It was true, Azazel was not stupid. That day he found an injured Gohan in the flower park. He tried to read his mind, but he was surprised when he couldn't do it. The boy seemed to have a clear mind and strong enough to resist powerful mental attacks, all while unconscious. You asked me for an answer, Gohan-kun, the fallen one continued, getting the Demi-Saiyan's full attention, and we'll give it to you, he said calmly, not taking his eyes off a confused Gohan. Shall we give? He thought, confused. Tyx. The Demi-Saiyan's senses exploded. Who are you? Gohan jumped up, adopting the turtle school battle pose. What do you want? He narrowed his eyes at the two new figures that appeared in his apartment. We're not here to cause trouble, the figure said in a calm and peaceful tone. They're Gohan from Universe 7 inches. They took a step forward, leaving our young lead stunned. The shortest but not at all small. He was obese, his skin seemed to be a shade of green, while he wore a white mohawk, strangely familiar to the black-haired man, not to mention those earrings that Gohan was very familiar with. He wears the formal attire that Shin, Kibito, and himself had worn on the Supreme Planet, this being a purple flannel, which has a red cape over it, blue pants with a light blue sash around his waist, and the same boots, white ones that he once used on his feet. The other subject was tall, perhaps as tall as Piccolo. His skin, unlike the previous one, was green in color, this being a bluer tone than the other. He had a large lanky head with pointed ears, with the Pathalas tendrils on them. He wore a large hat on his head. He had a red wine-colored tunic with yellow edges and a purple shirt. On his waist he wore a light blue scarf, while the baggy pants were blue, with white boots completing his outfit. Gohan couldn't believe his eyes. These guys, they were Kaioshin's. What the hell? Supreme Kaio-sama. He hesitated, not sure he was right. However, his eyes didn't deceive him. The resemblance to the Kaioshin of his universe, it was amazing. In some way. The chubby guy smiled. Glad he didn't need an introduction. The boy in front of him seemed to be smart, however, he already knew that. That's right, son Gohan-san, he confirmed to the black-haired man, who couldn't stop looking at them in shock. At least from this universe, the confused look that settled on the Demi-Saiyan's face made him smile a little more. His companion simply remained silent, with his arms crossed behind his back, and looking a little disinterested at the Saiyan's behavior. Azazel, on the other hand, smiled upon seeing the face of his protege. This was undoubtedly very funny to see. What do you mean by this universe? Gohan started, however, he stopped when he partially understood what he meant. You mean there are more Kaioshin? He deduced, not leaving that surprised look on his face. Gohan couldn't believe it, this universe had its own Kaioshin. It made sense if he thought about it, he had been transported to another universe, it was more than logical that a supreme being existed in this place. If there was a kami here, why not a Kaioshin? It's normal for you mortals that you don't know much about the supreme gods. The other subject took the floor, his tone showed arrogance and disgust towards him. You should feel honored to be in his presence. His gaze was sharp and critical. For him this mortal was an error of creation, he had already seen all that pain, lust, selfishness, laziness, greed that this planet Earth housed, so full of mortal sinners. It was disgusting. Gohan looked confused at the tall figure, he could see the guy's clear annoyance with him. Don't worry young son Gohan-san, the Supreme told him, making him turn to look at him. My assistant isn't very understanding with mortals. Gohan nodded absently, however, I would like to discuss some business with you and Azazel. Sanbai Haya, can I finish, expecting the respect of the confused Demi-Saiyan and a smiling Azazel. With Issei, cling, cling, the bell rang on Issei's bicycle, while he pedaled along the sidewalk, avoiding the few passers-by in the place. It had gotten a bit dark due to the sun hiding in the distant mountains of Kuo, however, the few solar rays that still remained gave the city a faint dark orange color, leaving more than one of Kuo's citizens amazed. It was a simply beautiful view. According to the paper that Bucho gave me, Issei said, suddenly stopping with his bicycle, this is the place. He muttered looking up. It was an urban zone, with some larger buildings in the surroundings, companies, hotels. However, the destination of the chestnut tree was one in particular, more precisely, the department of one of the smaller buildings. Deciding not to waste any more time, the brown-haired man approached the building, where he could see the closed white doors of the place. However, the numbering on each one was what caught his attention the most. 13D, it was his destiny. Issei looked at a pattern. He could see at least 10 numbers on the bottom floor, going from 1 to 10 successively. This confirmed that the place he was looking for was on the second floor. I hope I can fulfill this contract, he thought with the courage to do it, while he went up the stairs of the place. It was bad enough, what had happened that night with his first contractor, bastard priest. It was time for him to stand up for himself, and make his president proud. Knock, knock, knock. I knocked 3 times on the door, waiting for an answer from the other side. Issei didn't have to wait too long, when the door was flung open, terrifying the poor boy with what he was seeing, while his color faded from his face. Maybe he was in the wrong place. In front of him, and looking at him with such passion that it made the body of a shocked Issei tremble, was a very tall guy, too tall he would say. And much bigger than his friend Gohan. Perhaps it was due to his colossal size. However, what he was wearing was disconcerting, and even more so for someone his size. His white cap hid his long black hair, tied in 2 pigtails, while he wore some kind of fake cat ears in front. Or at least, Issei hoped they were fake. Her attire was a magical girl cosplay, being a short white blouse close to her body, and with red borders, it reached her navel, showing her very defined ABCs. On top she wore an attempt at a scarf, of the same color, being held together by a pink ribbon, keeping everything in place, while wearing a mini skirt underneath, showing off her very toned legs. The extremely muscular arms were covered by long white silk gloves, managing to cover above his robust elbows, in itself, a very disturbing sight for the brunette. Welcome, it's been awaiting your arrival, Demon Dono, he exclaimed vehemently, while he posed in a disgusting way, in the opinion of the other boy present. Why you requested the services of a demon. She shuddered considerably as she saw him nod quickly. Shit, what have I gotten myself into? She thought in utter terror. That's right, NYA, I summoned a devil because I have a request to make to it. NYA, he was tall and smiling, like the image he presented, as he moved closer to the poor scared demon. What could your request be? The brown-haired man asked doubtfully, taking a step back cautiously. This guy scares me, why did he always get these contracts? It just seemed that fate was always against him. Please Demon Dono, turn Milton into a Mahu Shouju. he said, clasping their hands in a clear sign of begging, give Milton fantasy powers. NYA. I beg, waiting for a positive response from the demon. Your fantasy powers are already strong enough, he muttered sarcastically. This made the poor giant in cosplay cry. No, no, wait, don't cry. There must be some way, Issei said hastily, as he turned in all directions, relieved that not see curious glances. Can we talk inside? He returned his gaze to the guy, who immediately stopped crying. So you're making me a Mahu Shouju? I asked hopefully, making the other guy sweat a bit. I'll try to listen to you at least. He resigned himself, he had to fulfill the contract after all. However, how would he do it? The colossal figure of the subject was lost in the corridor of his house, leaving a stunned Issei standing at the door of the department. However, he did not take long to return, while making the ground shake slightly in his walk, much to the dismay of the chestnut. Then watch, Mahu Shouju Spiral Ninki Ultra 7, with me. NYA, he began, while showing her a DVD, with the image of a girl posing, and with the same outfit that the strange guy was wearing. That's how you can explain demon don't know what I want. NYA, a bead of sweat ran down the back of Issei's neck. Not again, he thought dejectedly, letting himself fall to the ground in defeat, and wishing that he had died that day at the hands of Yama-chan. Poor him. With Gohan. That this is the brother universe of mine. Gohan yelled, shocked at what the Kaioshin of this universe had told him. That's right, son Gohan-san, the Supreme confirmed to a stunned black-haired man, while Azazel laughed at his protege's behavior, and the Assistant Supreme remained silent. Your Universe 7, where you come from, it's the counterpart to ours, this being Universe 6 inches, he told her, not fazed by the teenager's reaction. Gohan had no words to say, it was simply a shock to him and his beliefs. All the crazy theories he had about dimensions and universes vanished in a heartbeat. They just disappeared. And you, Azazel-san, did you know this all along? Her gaze went to the smiling Fallen, who couldn't help but deny in response to the black-haired man. Not at first, he began, as he walked towards the puzzled black-haired man. I only knew what you told me, Gohan-kun. However, do you remember those days when you were in my apartment? I asked him, placing his right hand on the Saiyan's shoulder. Of course I remember, he replied, a little confused as to what he was getting at. You always seemed to disappear all day. I thought, he trailed off as something clicked on him. I see you noticed. Azazel began to smile at him, when he saw his eyes widen. Well, he's the one responsible, he pointed to the Supreme, who nodded at the Fallen One's affirmation. Gohan looked between Azazel and the Supreme and Azazel. Now it all started to make sense. That's right, young son Gohan-san, the chubby guy spoke, while his gaze was on the Demi-Saiyan. When you first arrived in this universe, I felt the alteration you caused in space-time. It didn't take long discovering what had caused it. Quote, he continued, while remembering those events. However, I was very surprised to discover that a mortal from Universe 7 had managed to pass the restrictions that separate us from our brother universe. He paused when he saw the hand raised by the black-haired man, as if he were in a class. Sorry for the interruption, Supreme Kaio-sama. I already understood all that about the brother universe, he said, apologizing a little for interrupting him. But what does Azazel-san have to do with all this? Gohan wanted answers regarding the Fallen. Crash. The breaking sound of a glass vase that fell to the ground was heard, drawing the attention of everyone present. How dare you interrupt the great Kaio-sama? You dirty mortal! The angry shouts of the assistant, apparently silent throughout the conversation, and the one responsible for having broken the home ornament, were present. However, they were silenced by a look from his superior. Dirty deadly, Gohan said with narrowed eyes. He didn't like this guy's attitude towards him. Azazel maintained his calculating smile. However, he hid his annoyance towards the Kaioshin's assistant very well. Azazel couldn't help feeling a little suspicious of that guy. He remembered very well his arrogant attitude that day where he met him, and where he met him. I revealed to him, by courtesy of the Supreme, many of the things that neither he nor any of the factions knew. I apologize on behalf of my assistant, young son Gohan-san. This made the guy furious, but he kept silent. While Gohan nodded in understanding, Kawana-san, he called out to his assistant, causing him to turn to face C. Tell me, my lord, I asked doubtfully, trying to suppress his anger at the impudent mortal. Go back to the Supreme Planet. I'll stay here to talk a little more with son Gohan-san, he said seriously. However, his assistant thought otherwise. But great Fuwa-sama, I can't leave him here with these. He was silenced again by his superior. It's a Kawana order. There was no anger or fury, but he was firm in demanding it. Kawana looked down. He couldn't argue with his lord, not if ordered to. Gohan and Azazel remained silent. However, they didn't like this guy's attitude at all. The black-haired boy felt some arrogance inside, very similar to a certain Saiyan prince. It was disturbing to say the least. Son Gohan, the lanky green guy thought, as he prepared to return to the Supreme Planet, this won't stay like this. A look of hate directed at the Demi-Saiyan could be seen briefly on his face for a few seconds before to disappear along with his presence. Those present remained in an uncomfortable silence after the disappearance of the assistant to the Supreme. Gohan had seen that look on him. He didn't understand why he hated so much towards him. I apologize again for my assistant's attitude, and I hope you can forgive him. The Supreme apologized again, slightly inclining his chubby body. Don't worry, Supreme Kaio-sama, there is no grudge, the Demi-Saiyan assured him, making the Kaioshin smile in gratitude. Okay, let's get back to the topic at hand, he continued, while making a mental note to himself to reprimand his assistant. I tried to contact you, however, your unconscious and weak state prevented me. This left me only one option, he continued, while his gaze traveled to the fallen angel. Contact with Azazel-san, he deduced the black-haired man, earning a nod from the Kaioshin. Why? I asked, still not understanding the point he wanted to get to. I thought it was a good choice, he said with a shrug. I had to keep a watchful eye on you, and my job as Kaioshin didn't allow me. I looked at him nodding in understanding, then I thought, why not let someone in this world do it for me? Gohan's eyes widened slightly as he understood everything. Azazel took a step forward, while spreading his hands to the sky and looking with a smug smile at the stunned Demi-Saiyan. Then there between me, the fallen one exclaimed, leaving Gohan even more perplexed. The Supreme agreed with the fallen one's affirmation, before continuing with his tale. I made the decision to strengthen the mental abilities of your tutor, to be able to communicate more easily with him at such a far distance, he revealed, surprising the black-haired man again. Is that why you were able to break my barriers? He didn't yell, but his eyes widened, not believing what he was told. Azazel nodded in response, and smiled at his ward's question. The fallen angel, he was really enjoying this. It made sense if he thought about it. The Supreme Kaioshin had very powerful telepathic powers, much more than his own Namekian mentor. Piccolo had told him this, when he fought against Shin in the martial arts tournament. If a Supreme Kaiosama had strengthened the psychic abilities of an already expert Azazel, it meant a lot. The matter we were going to deal with was highly discreet. I couldn't risk third parties finding out about it. Gohan immediately understood her decision. There, I told him everything you know. In return, he informed me of everything he told him. Gohan glared at his tutor, who could only shrug at his glare. I must add that I did a little research on you, young son Gohan-san. I was really surprised to learn of your Saiyan ancestry. However, you are very different from any Saiyan I have seen. This encouraged the curiosity of the black-haired man. Does it mean that the Saiyajin existed here too? I exclaimed with a start, and a little excited at the odds. As a matter of fact, that's right, he answered, looking at the enthusiasm of the only youth in the room. However, since the universe was a counterpart to his, the Saiyans of this universe didn't die. Gohan looked surprised at this. What Saiyajin were still alive? There wasn't a Frieza here. Many questions passed through the young warrior's mind. Which brings me to the next point. This time his tone showed more seriousness, and Azazel let his smile fall for the first time. Gohan realized that this would be something serious. Azazel seemed to already be aware of what he would say, and it made him uneasy not to see that smile on the face of Grigori's leader, fallen angel. In your universe, the Earth has always remained intact, isn't it? I asked, waiting for the Saiyajin's answer. That's right, my dad and my friends protected her several times. There always seemed to be guys wanting to destroy her. She remembered the constant battles they fought on behalf of the Plantea. I'm not aware if Majin Buu managed it, but I was able to contact my father, and he told me that everything was in order. He put his hand on his chin, reflecting on what he had just said. But your planet still exists, the Supreme added, making Gohan nod in confirmation. So what do you think will happen on this planet? He asked, while he looked at the confused look of the Demi-Saiyan. Attitude of hers made her world a brighter place. No, not everything was so bad. Well, I have to say goodbye, young son Gohan-san. The Kaioshin called his attention, who smiled all the time at the scene. My assistant must be very worried that I won't return, he told them, nodding according to the other two in the place, however, a little leery by the aforementioned. Don't worry Supreme Kaio-sama, and I am grateful to you for telling me all this, the Demi-Saiyan thanked, as he bowed his body in respect. Same here Supreme, the fallen angel began, as he bowed himself, earning a curious look from the Saiyan next to him. I hope you can accept my training request, he smiled as he saw Gohan's eyes widen. I'll be in contact with you fallen angel Azazel-san, he said smiling, earning a nod from the fallen one, and a shocked look from the surprised Saiyan. I'll see you later, Kai. Gohan knew that technique very well. You may follow in your tutor's footsteps and ask him to show it to you. Tyx. He suddenly disappeared, leaving the two of them in a long silence. Gohan looked at Azazel smiling. He really kept a lot of things from him. So training, huh? She questioned, as she watched him walk to the couch. What can I say? The fallen one shrugged, as he sat down, and leaned back comfortably on the back of the chair. I saw the opportunity and took advantage of it. Besides, I have to keep up with my protege. You don't believe it, he smiled at her, making the black-haired man sigh in defeat. Azazel really drove him crazy. He just didn't get it. Come on Gohan-kun, the fallen one called, patting the seat next to him. Come here, we still have other matters to discuss, he said, never letting that very smile of his fall. Gohan could only resign himself and shake his head tiredly. Great, more explanations to give. There is no doubt that it was a very long day for our young warrior. The next day, Rias-san, she's going to be so mad at me for being late, Gohan muttered, not too enthusiastic about the idea. The Demi-Saiyan entered the occult club building very exhausted. The day before was very exhausting for the Demi-Saiyan, so many things to think about, so much information to process. It was simply too much for his young mind, which he could not help but fall in love with. His bed, before he let sleep consume him. Too bad he forgot to set the alarm clock. Azazel wasn't the icing on the cake. Let's say, the fallen one had stressed to him not to reveal his existence to the Grimoire clan yet. He told him that he had some plans, and not to worry, it was all for the good of the clan from Rias. Gohan doubted whether to oppose or not. However, he understood the motives of his legal guardian, at least to a certain extent. Gohan's memories. I hope you understand my point Gohan-kun, Azazel said, looking at him. I do, however, and as I told you before, Azazel-san, he began seriously, making the adult smile. If something happens to him because of you, I won't forgive you, the fallen man nodded, however, never he dropped his smile. By the way Gohan-kun, his tutor had told him, as he lay his hand on his robe, I took the liberty of fixing this, as a favor for what you've done for me. His eyes widened, when he saw the orange doji with which he arrived here. However, it was in good condition. It's what your father always wears, you told me. No. A stunned nod was what he got. Well, don't stay looking silly and take it, Azazel smiled, amused by the Saiyan's reaction. I don't know how to thank you Azazel-san. The adult's raised hand silenced him. You have nothing to be thankful for Gohan-kun, she smiled, seeing him nod with his own son smile, as he got up from the sofa, and walked towards the entrance. By the way, I hope you're paying attention these days at your school, he informed looking over his shoulder slightly, and earning a curious look from the black-haired boy. You might be in for a big surprise Gohan-kun, he smiled mysteriously as only he knows how to do it. Before walking out of the apartment, leaving a bewildered and stunned Demi-Saiyan on the couch. End of Gohan's memory. A big surprise, what does he mean by that? He asked himself when he opened the doors of the club. So much information in a single day, they did not let him reflect on his words. It was frustrating, to say the least. Though, wait. Wah. He was immediately accosted by a bliss-excited Akeno, as she fell on top of him, rubbing her very abundant breasts on his flushed face. That's right, fuck the reflection. Good morning Gohan-kun, she whispered seductively into his ear, making him flinch when she thought it was a good idea to lightly nibble at his ear. This is your punishment for being late, naughty boy. Good. Akeno was really worrying him now. Cough, cough. The sound of someone coughing took him out of the world of him. I don't want to interrupt your moment, but we have things to discuss. Rias was jealous, looking daggers at her best friend, who got up from the ground, helping the Saiyajin to his feet. Gohan looked at all the members of the club were present. Issei, Asia, Kaneko, Kiba, Rias and of course Akino, who had approached him not too long ago. Era, Bucho, I'm just saying, good morning, to my Kohai. To further emphasize his point, he lightly kissed the stunned Gohan's cheek, being taken by surprise. Damn you Akino, Rias thought jealously, slightly clenching her fists and making a cute pout. What exactly happened yesterday? She wondered, remembering that her queen's attitude towards the black-haired man was the opposite of what he was showing now. Akino seemed happier than usual. Whatever Gohan said to her, it must have made her very happy. Rias's mind wandered slightly. Akino-san, I love you, Gohan told her, as he kissed the neck of the girl riding on top of him. I love you so much Gohan-kun. Make me yours. I need it. Akino's excited moans were muffled by the constant kisses of the black-haired man and his. Out with interruptions, she screeched jealously, while vehemently shaking her flushed head. Issei, Asia, Kiba and Kaneko could only stare at the scene in bewilderment. Akino seemed to have drastically changed her attitude towards Gohan. They wondered why. However, they seemed to be more united now, very suspicious. As I was saying before Gohan arrived, Rias went, adding a clearly annoyed tone, when she mentioned the black-haired boy, who could only cringe at her gaze, delivering pamphlets at a familiar's job, she said to Issei, sitting in the couch. So you mean I'll stop handing out pamphlets? The brown-haired man asked his president, who agreed to her question. But before that happens, he began, as his gaze traveled to the nun at Issei's side, you both need to get your own familiar, he told them, before making a small chubby bat appear in his hand. This is my familiar. The small creature exploded in a cloud of smoke. Gohan, Issei, and Asia widened their gaze, seeing how a cute brown-haired girl appeared next to Rias, and out of the smoke, wearing a simple dress with a matching burgundy skirt. Era, Akino began, drawing the attention of the three. This is my familiar. She made a small being appear on the ground, cactus green in color. Its eyes were two black triangles without pupils, while its only horn protruded from his green hair. It's so small, the Demi-Saiyan commented, raising Akino's familiar with the palm of his hand, wanting to get a better view of it. Oi! He yelled in pain, when the small creature left. It flung at him, poking its right eye with the tip of its tiny horn. Era, why did you do that? Akino asked her familiar in confusion. However, he lunged at her, hugging her huge breasts, and scowling at the Saiyan in pain. They all looked at this in bewilderment, not understanding anything of what was happening. Gohan, however, took the hint. And in a very painful way. This is Shiro, Kaneko said, drawing everyone's attention, as she held a small white kitten, with a bell collar, to her furry neck. And mine is, Kiba started, however, he was interrupted by the nonchalant brunette. I don't need to see yours, he said dismissively, not interested in the pretty boy who just wanted to show off. Gohan dropped a drop of sweat from his friend's coldness with the blonde. Poor Kiba. Your familiar can bring you information or deliver messages, the president of the occult club explained. It's one of the essential foundations to be a good demon, she said, while looking at the three who were unaware of the topic assenting. But how do you get familiars, Rias-san? Asked a curious Gohan, glancing slightly at the girl's familiars, pausing slightly at Akino's, who could have sworn she saw him point his little hand at him. Perhaps, Dream's little privilege was taking its toll on him. You see Gohan, Rias was going to answer the question, however. Knock, knock, knock. They knocked on the door of the club. Era, go ahead, Akino said, confused who it was. The doors were flung open, being held by two girls on either side. A girl with wavy white hair, blue-green eyes, was holding the left door, while the girl with long brown hair, ending in two short braids, and eyes to match, she kept the door straight. Excuse me, said the girl with short black hair and violet eyes, with a pair of glasses in them, as she made her way between the two girls who held the doors for her. Behind him followed a tall girl, with black hair, which reached to her mid-back, light brown eyes, who seemed to be wearing glasses, just like the other girl. They all seemed to be wearing the Kuo Academy uniform. Gohan slightly narrowed his eyes. He knew who they were. He had already had a brief encounter with them in the schoolyard. If he didn't remember correctly, it was Sauna Shitori, heir to the Citri clan, and her retinue. What did they want here?
Thanks for listening. If you want the next part of this video, be sure to like, subscribe and comment and hit that bell notification. See you next time.